Hi, welcome to Serious Social. This time I'm joined by Tom Head from Lab, a digital agency specialising in neuromarketing, behavioural science and psychology, looking at how brands can make more impact on digital using those techniques. Really interestingly, we're going to be talking today about a very specific segment. We've done some research on senior C-suite and how tech brands can target the buyers at the top end of their buying audiences. But before we get into that, Tom, I'd like to talk to you about why behavioural science matters at all.
Absolutely. So I think to simplify it down, there's two sort of key things that through behaviour we can do better. One is we can get attention, which we're all trying to do with this wave of content and noise that happens across all channel. We're vying for people's attention. And so we have a shorter and shorter amount of time to get attention from the people that we want. And the follow-up to that is if we get their attention, we want it to be memorable, because we know that if we send somebody through to our website, they're not going to convert the first time they come. And so the higher the emotional response we can create, the more memorability we end up having. So those two things allow us to really use our behavioural knowledge and expertise to the maximum in the channels and across the whole digital landscape. So I think that's what we're interested in. I think in the report that we've put together, there's just a couple of fascinating findings on the tech C-suite, particularly in the behavioural space as well as the demographic space. I know. But what were your thoughts on those?
So there's some basics that I think are quite fascinating. The first is that they're young, cynical, and very mobile, and I mean mobile phone rather than moving around. But one of the really interesting facts is that they are surprisingly probably, they're mostly male. So 78% of them are men, but they get more male when they get onto social media. So within Twitter, over 80% of them are male when that are talking on Twitter. But the really surprising fact was how young they are. So 42% of them are between the ages of 25 and 34. Yeah, very young. And when you compare that to, say, the general C-suite, which is roughly around 28% in that age range, you can see how young they really are, and therefore much more social, much more active, and playing in that space, whilst 70% of them are decision makers. So we're not talking about being young and having fun. We're talking about young and making buying decisions.
And this is right from the newer style, tech-led companies through to enterprise companies as well.
Absolutely.
Because we often think that just in that enterprise level, they're all older, and they're all in complex environments and everything else. But it's showing us different things.
Totally. And there's also one really interesting behavioural bit that I think is really, really useful for us to know, which is in their activity, in their engagement with social, they don't comment. They rarely comment. In fact, what they do is they'll put out their own opinion and thought pieces, but they'll also share. So what's more interesting to them is not maybe talking to you as a brand, but they're interested in talking to you, telling their community more about what you've said. Yeah. It's a slightly different nuance to it. Yeah. Which changes the game
completely. And I think that's that understanding of behaviour for a particular group is so important today. Because you could look at that and say they're not commenting. That's a metric of engagement. They're not engaged. They are engaged. They just have a different set of behaviours. And we found the same thing when we've looked at enterprise C-suite technology decision makers for a recent client of ours, a global technology company, and we looked at some of the data they had, and we ran some research ourselves. And what we found within that audience was that they're in big, complex environments that have historically always run a very, very waterfall process, and their belief systems were that agile actually wasn't robust as the old processes they were running. And so they're in this challenging world anyway, where they're driven by growth and they need to do it quickly, We're in this hamster wheel of having to drive company growth and do it faster, and technology is seen sometimes as the answer to that. But we found that they thought that agile processes weren't robust. So we took that research, we used it to build out campaign concepts. We used Robustly Agile as the lead hook on those campaigns. And then we playfully took animals from nature who were robust and agile. So we had the Ellie bird, which was an elephant combined with a hummingbird, which we merged together and animated. We had the Squee Rhino, which was a squirrel and a rhino, which we seamlessly merged together. Actually looked like a new animal. And we put those out in the channels, and you know, we're trying to create messaging that really resonates with that audience. So the message creates an interrupt because it goes into their belief system, and visually it creates an interrupt because we don't know what we're looking at. So we're trying to wake people up in those channels to get attention, and that ended up being one of the most successful campaigns they ran, which I think links back to, you know, our original conversation of driving those things.
And I think that, you know, 99.6% of them are on social media, and that the big mistake made by most tech brands is to assume that they can only talk work in one channel. And actually, just playing to what you're saying, is that is a really creative campaign. It's very standout, but actually that works across all social channels. And what we're seeing is that when it comes to this specific audience, they're thinking work. They don't have a kind of weird B2B brain and a big consumer brain like this on both sides. They don't switch one bit off and turn one bit on. Yeah. They don't think like that. What they do is that they're surfing, whether it's on Facebook or even Instagram. If they see something that triggers them into work, they will do. In fact, 45% of them follow brands on social media that they want to work with. They over 40% of them follow content that's to do with work, and I think it's about just over 30% of them will actually use social media for work purposes. And that social media is not just one channel.
Yeah,
and that's the bit we're going to talk about at an event we're running at the end of July, on the 25th of July. There should be a link popping up shortly, which you can click on to join us, where we're going to go into so much more of this kind of behavioural data and insight,
and being able to join it up across channel, you know, right? So how do we get attention in these social channels, and how do we understand where people are, and then how do we take them into the other channels and make sure that whole journey matches their expectations, you know? And we know when we do that, we get dramatic results.
And I am really very passionate about this, because for most of our clients, lead gen is the kind of end goal, gleaming away, the star in the corner that everybody wants to get to. But yet what frequently happens is we get it right on one channel, and then when they move to another channel, it doesn't work. Whether it's making sure, because 80% of this audience is on mobile phones, and so accessing social media on mobile, that you're well mobile enabled, then so that they can fill in those forms, because I've seen forms that just do not work on mobile phones. You know, you're stumping the process. They're young, they're cynical, they're mobile. You have to remember that. So thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
And follow us on #SeriouSocial. Thank you for joining us.